Okay, on this video, I'm going to talk about the power drivetrain on this drill rig. All right, this particular machine, again, is a 1973 LDH made by Hugh Williams. This engine is a 453 Detroit. I like this engine. It's kind of loud, but it's got good torque even at low RPM, which is nice, especially when you're drilling slurry holes, and I'll talk about that in another video sometime. It's a 24 volt system. Right now we've got two Group 31 batteries in here. I think when we bought it, it had the 4D batteries, but two of the Group 31s cranks it just fine, and that's what we use on pretty much everything else. So I use them on here too, so we have uniformity about different batteries, and these are not as heavy to handle by yourself. All right, so you got the engine. It's got a clutch, and there's basically that engages a PTO, and at the end of this thing comes a heavy shaft that has a pulley on it that drives a belt. And if I remember, I don't know about this machine, but I know that one we used to use mostly has a 10 shiv drive belt. This one looks like it might not be quite as wide, but it drives basically from the engine to the main power shaft that's on the back side of this. All right, so you've got three shafts in the rig that run parallel. You got the main power shaft that comes off of this, and down in the guts of this thing, it's got belts that run around another. I don't know if you can see it from in here. Let me see if I can poke it up close enough to tell what's going on. I don't know if you can see it from this side. Everything that's in here, you kind of can down low. There's 8 or 10 belts, I think, in here that they're individual, whereas this one you can get the well, maybe you can get the wide belts on either one, but the ones that are inside have individual belts on this rig instead of one wide or a couple wider multiple strand belts. But basically the belts run around. You see these two shafts that are vertical here, one right above the other. Those two and the power shaft that comes off of this drive from the engine, the belts run around those three shafts, and they all run, I think all the drums on them are the same diameter, so they should all run the same RPM. All right, so when you engage the master clutch, it makes the belt inside here turn, which turns the shaft on this end and turns those other two shafts. On the other side, you've got a hydraulic pump, which is up underneath my umbrella here, and it runs off of the other end of the power shaft, and it's got some U joints connecting it so that it doesn't have to be lined up perfectly straight. All right, then you got of course the power hydraulic powers all the hydraulic stuff on here, and I'll talk about that later in a different video. Up top toward the front, you've got a winch. This is the original winch that, well, it came on a different rig to start with, but it's the original LDH mechanical winch. It used to be that this was a complicated thing to operate. You've got a clutch here. You can see that fork. It's engaged all the time right now. It's got a chain dog that we had welded on here so that you could basically tighten that chain dog to engage that clutch. So that clutch is all the time grabbing. And we plumbed in a hydraulic motor to run that winch. It used to be that there was a sprocket. It may still be there. No. See that pillow block bearing? It used to be that just toward the outside of that, once upon a time, this thing had a sprocket there before we bought it. And that sprocket drove a chain that ran up around this. And so that chain will be going all the time whenever the master clutch was engaged. And it used to have a clutch lever and a brake pedal and a shift lever and a locking mechanism for this winch. So you used to have 4 controls for it. Now you just have one hydraulic lever. Basically, used to, and it still is here, the turntable has a hydraulic motor up here that it operates off that tall lever that's all the way out to the outside next to the umbrella stand, and it runs this motor, and this turns that worm drive. On the bottom of that worm drive is a sprocket. It runs 100 size chain that drives this sprocket. That sprocket's on the same shaft that drives this 160 chain, and the 160 chain, it goes around the turntable. So whenever you send oil to that motor, it makes the rig try to rotate around on this giant bearing down here. And inside of this cover, if you move this diamond plate, then you can see a real big brake band that goes all the way around. And at the front, up here in the middle, is a it's a hydraulic cylinder that tightens that brake band. I gotta take care of something.